And good day, everybody. Welcome on in episode 138 of the Talking for Hours podcast and YouTube show. Ben Fadden, your host here tonight. Thank you so much, everyone, for hopping on in here to the YouTube live stream or watching on YouTube on replay. Thank you, everyone, on the podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, for tuning in as well. At Talking for Hours on Twitter, at Talking for Hours on Instagram, at Talking for Hours on TikTok. And you can hit me up there, ask any questions you want. If you ever want any questions, mailbag questions, if you can't make a live stream and you want those answered, go ahead and leave them there as well. This episode sponsored by GAGLIONE Bros, famous cheesesteaks and subs, located at Point Loma, located in Sports Arena, located at Petco Park all season long. Their main booth with cheesesteaks, garlic fries down the third baseline by the Valley Sports Show booth. And speaking of the pre- and post-game show booth, we will get to that and some of the Padres broadcast schedule, the national TV broadcast schedule. A lot of stuff to discuss tonight. Again, for our sponsor, GAGLIONE Bros, cheesesteaks and subs. GAGLIONEBros.com to view their entire menu. All right, let's get started. In the chat, everyone tell me where you're watching from. I'll give you a shout out and hit me up with any questions you have. Again, a lot to talk about today. We got yesterday's game. I was working yesterday. Again, if you missed my full reaction to the Beaty trade, that was episode 137. So you can go watch or listen to that after this episode's over. I gave my full thoughts. It was like within 20 minutes after the trade happened. I think I was the first, Padre live stream out there giving my thoughts on it. So I'd appreciate if you go watch and listen to that. Give me your thoughts. I love, commenting and replying to everyone's thoughts, on the YouTube page or on social media. So there's that. He spoke for the first time as a Padre today with the media. He played in his first spring training game as a Padre today against the Giants. That didn't go well for the Padres as a whole, but it went pretty well for him, and we'll get into that and what he did and his comments to the media today. We'll start with yesterday's game. The Padres have new jerseys that are coming out later this year. So a lot to discuss, a lot to talk about. As you can see, all of the topics that will be discussed are in the ticker down below, starting with that Mike Clevinger rocky start. But first, we're going to start with Monday's game. Just a quick recap since I did not cover that. 9-8, Padres won. Luis Campusano hit that go-ahead grand slam in the top of the ninth. Jorge Alfaro has definitely played himself onto this roster, and I think that's pretty clear. He has 4 home runs now of this spring. He already, those 4 home runs, hit a home run again on Monday, and then he doubled as well in that game. Again, Joe Musgrove, he also pitched. Had the 4 innings on Monday, 2 earned runs, 5 hits, 1 walk, 4 strikeouts, 1 home run. That 1 home run was to Eloy Jimenez, who's obviously a good young hitter. And Emilio Pagan was obviously the big story. I know everyone on Twitter was saying Pagan instead of just Pagan. It was PA-GONE, so just spelling gone, just because they don't want him to be the closer. They don't like him right now. That's pretty clear. And I kind of disagree with people not liking him. I understand why they don't like him. And if you don't like him in the viewpoint that you don't want him to be the closer, I can understand why. But at the same time, I think you should still like him to be a reliable reliever in this bullpen. I don't see why he shouldn't be. I think he fits well, maybe in that 7th or 8th inning spot, maybe not as the 9th inning closer. But for some reason, I feel like it's going to come down to him or Robert Suarez for that closer spot if Bob Melvin decides to go that, full solidified closer from the start of the season on. Kind of like how Melanson, grabbed that last year, if he decides to do that. He spoke to the media today kind of about the closer situation. And so we'll get into those comments as well. But I just wanted to cover that, Monday game. Emilio Pagan went a third of an inning, 5 runs he gave up, 5 hits, didn't walk anyone, but he gave up a home run. And so right when it kind of felt like, okay, Emilio Pagan was kind of turning the corner and all that. That ends up not really being the case in terms of like being shut out the entire, spring training Cactus League campaign this year that he is pitching. Now, this is a spring training game, so it doesn't matter. A little bit, but mostly not, because again, these results don't matter. So I guess you can, put this appearance into your head, right? Put it into the back of your head or into the front of your head. I know a lot of Padre fans are going to put it into the front of their head, but again, it is a spring training appearance, and he was good this past spring training, or his past appearances this whole spring training, not including this one. But it is, we're all, we all have recency bias, and we're all victims of the moment, right? And Pagan, the fact of the matter is, he sucked yesterday. He sucked his last spring training appearance, and that's what people are going to, remember and talk about right now. So that's unfortunate for Emilio. I don't know how much they're going to put this into effect in terms of the closer situation. But give me your thoughts on Emilio. If you think he should be the closer, who you think should be the closer, because that's one of the spots that's obviously up for grabs this spring and going into opening day on April 7th against the Arizona Diamondbacks. Before we get to the City Connect jerseys, let's get to today's game, as I'm coming to you live after the Padres lost to the Giants, 11-6. Mike Clevinger. Okay, so before we get into that, David comments, Emilio Pagan sucks. I don't think he sucks. I mean, he's a big league reliever. I think everyone has their bad appearances. It is Arizona, and the ball does fly more than it does in normal major league ballparks. But again, like I mentioned earlier, I understand why fans might be frustrated with Emilio just because of the whole Dodgers stuff last year. And then this start, it's kind of like deja vu for them. So I understand. You can have that opinion if you want to. Moving to today's game, Mike Clevinger is the big headline of this game and how he struggled. His first spring training start of this year. It was his first appearance, game action, since October 6th of 2020. So it's been a long, long time for Mike Clevinger. He said after the game that his timing was off, and his stat line definitely shows that. He was scheduled to go 3-ish innings, according to Bob Melvin. He was pulled after 2 outs and 22 pitches into the second inning. So he technically did not go 3 full innings, just without anyone else coming in. He did pitch into the third inning, though, but he was relieved in the second inning. And because it's spring training, you're allowed to come back in to the game, even if you were relieved if someone else came in the middle of an inning, you can come back and pitch to start that next inning. And that's what it looks like Clevinger did here. So gets pulled in the second inning. And in that second inning, he gave up 2 walks and 2 doubles. He did have a couple strikeouts. In the third inning, he came back. He was relieved of in the second. In the third, he came back, and he only had 10 pitches. From what it looks like on MLB Game Day and all that, he didn't even finish the third inning. This game was not on TV, so it's hard to evaluate because, I for people that have watched, I like doing breakdowns. I like seeing things visually so I can make my own judgment and not just, read Kevin Acey's reports or read Dennis Lynn's reports or AJ Cassavell's reports about his line and how it looked, because I like seeing it for myself and making my own evaluations and coming on here and giving my own evaluations visually with actual proof visually, so you guys that didn't see it or want to see it again can see it. But that wasn't the case here. I do have the 2 home runs that he gave up to Joey Bart and Jock Peterson on video, so I will show that to the YouTube audience. And so for the podcast audience, I encourage you to go watch this episode again to see that, or go look up the videos yourself online. But again, he was pulled in the second, pulled in the third, 10 pitches through the third inning he was pulled. Gave up a double, a home run, a single, and then another home run. So the 2 home runs he gave up were in the third inning. He finished with a line of 8 earned runs allowed, again, he did not have a firm inning amount. He pitched, he gave up, I think he went 5 outs technically. So if that's what you want to say, the line is technically an inning and 2/3. I can understand if that's where you want to go with that. But he technically pitched some parts of 3 innings, 8 earned runs, gave up 7 hits, walked 2, struck out 3, and then gave up 2 home runs to Jock Peterson and Joey Bart. And like I mentioned earlier, Clevinger said his timing was off. He felt his arm was late. Again, it's hard to, really break down it, with the video, the 2 home runs that were posted online that I'll share with you right now, because it's not like the normal broadcast where it's closer to the right behind the batter's eye view, where you can kind of see right behind Clevinger. So let's go to the Jock Peterson home run first. Here is for the YouTube audience. Here's the Jock Peterson home run Mike Clevinger gave up. And if you'll notice, it is a middle in fastball. I think it's a fastball. Or actually, it might not be. That looks pretty slow if that was. That might be a little bit of a breaking ball. But again, for anyone that's watching, it's kind of hard to see really what pitch was thrown here. It was middle in, and Peterson golfed it over right field, over the right field fence. This video angle sucks because you literally can't see where the ball landed. Like for the YouTube audience here, it's obvious. You can see the umpire waving that it's a home run, but it went into the right field corner, but you couldn't see how far it went. So only people at the game could. So, but again, I keep replaying it here for the YouTube audience. For the podcast audience, again, it was middle in, and it looks like it was demolished. It didn't look like it had any chance of staying in, as the right fielder was walking and just looking up. So that wasn't great. Just middle in, probably missed location. And then if we move to now the Joey Bart home run, this one was another pull home run. This guy's a righty. And here's the Clevinger. This was definitely a breaking ball, and it was a case of the hangers. It definitely hung. And this ball was absolutely crushed. Moonshot over the left field bullpen. Here it is again. Just total middle of the plate, absolute hanger, and it was crushed. And so not great at all from Clevinger today. Again, gave up 8 runs. And the question I put in the ticker is if Padre fans, I don't know if I put it in the ticker, but my question to you guys here in the chat, do you think that you should be worried? Should we be worried as fans for Mike Clevinger? His status, his not his health. I think he's fine. Based on his comments, he said he was fine. His timing was just off. His arm was late. Again, it's been a long time since he's faced major league batters in an actual official Major League Baseball game, including obviously the last time it was October of 2020 when he exited the NLDS game early because he just couldn't throw breaking balls and he just wasn't effective. So it's been a long time. So I'm not necessarily worried. I'd answer that. I'm not worried. That would be my answer to my question. I'm not worried about Clevinger. It's been a long time. It just seemed like he wasn't right today, and you'd expect him to be right in his next appearance. But facts are facts, and the stat line, he gave up 8 runs, and this was like a McKenzie Gore start last spring training. He couldn't get out of, in terms of being able to get out of innings. And he wasn't able to get out of 2 straight innings. And I know it's on pitch count and all of that, but that's definitely a concern for me, especially obviously when you can't get out of innings. And it's also, I think, worthy to note that this start that he made, it was against a Giants team that he's going to have to face this year in the division, obviously assuming that he's going to be healthy. So it's not great. You'd obviously would have hoped that he would have shoved and gave up 1 run or something like that, or no runs. And maybe this is good for him to struggle now, and hopefully he doesn't struggle, when the season starts. But overall, I wouldn't be worried because at least it seems like he knows why he was struggling and why he struggled. And I'd expect the Padres to have video of his entire start, even though it wasn't televised. And so he can look back on it and all that. So I'm not concerned. Again, it's his first major league action in a very long time. And we know what he can do. Every other report out of spring training and during the offseason, not including this, was that he feels good and he looks really good. So I don't want to judge him and say, oh, man, Clevenger's going to stink this year off of one spring training appearance. So I'm not going to do that. Let's look at what some of our live audience thinks here. Quan Pham says, Emilio can't be pitched back-to-back days. I disagree with that, but that was back to the Emilio Pagan discussion. Here's to the Clevinger discussion. Quan says, yeah, I'm not concerned with Clevinger as long as his arm feels fine. He did not say anything about his arm not feeling fine. So, yeah, that's definitely something. That's definitely an aspect of why I'm also not discouraged, because his arm does feel fine, according to him. And that it seemed like it was just mechanical. His mechanics were kind of out of whack. He was late. And again, I wish I'd have, more video so I could break down that in terms of him being late, his arm being late, with his other mechanics. Does that mean that when he landed, when his front foot lands and he strides, his arm's not where it's supposed to be? I think that's what he means by his arm being late. And then let's get to more Clevinger here. I think he'll be fine. Quan says he's going to have some rust and it'll take time to get his timing down. Again, it was all about timing, it seems like today. And so that's why I'm not going to be totally discouraged by that. Giving up 8 runs is definitely alarming, but it seems like he gave up those 8 runs because his mechanics were off. And the Padres just wanted him to get up to a certain pitch count probably and just continue facing live batters, and they don't care too much about the results right now. Maybe they'll care more about his next start, probably his last one before opening day. They'll probably care about that a little more than what they did, how much they cared about his start today. So again, I would not be concerned. Thoughts on McKenzie Gore? Omar asked me. Yeah, so let's get to him right now, actually. So yeah, let's get to Gore. So Gore came in after Clevinger in the 4th. I think he relieved Nabil Chrismat. Through 2 innings, he threw 26 pitches, gave up 1 single through those first 2 innings. He had his first walk of spring training issued in his 3rd inning of work. He ended up going 4 innings, so he's more built out than Clevinger is, and maybe that helps him make a rotation or be a 6-man if they end up going with the 6-man rotation. Bob Melvin did speak about that today, which we'll get to momentarily. But his final line went 4 innings, gave up 2 runs, 3 hits, walked 1, and struck out 4. So it seems like a pretty good day. I know you would have hoped that he didn't give up any runs, but pitchers are going to give up runs, facing the best hitters on the planet. They're going to give up runs. And I really want to view McKenzie Gore in an optimistic viewpoint and a glass half full viewpoint. And frankly, I think it's easier and easier to do that because of what we're seeing this spring training. We're seeing McKenzie Gore with much better mechanics. We're seeing him and Ruben Niebla seem like they have a very good relationship. And it seems like things are really working right now, and they're going on the right path. That's what I'm going to say here about that is obviously it doesn't seem like Larry Rothschild with the whole Jace Tingler era worked very well. And Ruben Niebla, obviously a younger pitching coach, maybe he can relate more. He's probably more into the analytics than, Larry Rothschild was. And I think working with him at Petco Park before the lockout definitely helped. And obviously them working in bullpens and communicating after starts, before starts is definitely helping. And it seems like McKenzie is definitely more confident than he was last spring training and last year especially, in El Paso when he was struggling and then he had to get sent down. And I think he's more confident probably now than he was in the Arizona Fall League when he was making some appearances, this last Arizona Fall League. So I think everything right now is encouraging with Gore. I wouldn't read too much into the 2 runs that he gave up today. I still think that he's on the outside looking in terms of making the starting rotation because of the options they have. Darvish, Clevinger, Snell, Musgrove, Martinez, Paddock, Weathers. That's 7 guys for theoretically 5 spots. And then you have other guys in the bullpen like Stammen and Chris Matt. If Chris Matt makes the team, that can also piggyback like Snell and Clevinger. So I think probably right now the Padres probably don't want to have the mindset of putting McKenzie Gore on the roster if he's just going to piggyback. I think they want him to be built up and be making starts, whether that's at the big leagues or in the minor leagues. I think they want him to be making starts, and I think the most likely scenario is that he's making starts in AAA to start the year. And then if he continues pitching well, and if there's maybe an injury or if he continues pitching well, period, you would think that they'd really think about bringing him up, especially if something happens in the rotation or if the 5 starters in the rotation aren't pitching well. They're definitely going to think about bringing him up. But right now, I think my roster projection, if I had a roster projection, I would not have Gore on the roster right now. Just getting to the comments here still. Quan here on YouTube says, sometimes I want to see pitchers give up some runs. I like to see how they react from it. Yeah, I think sometimes it's good for young pitchers to give up home runs to see how they react. And if they just totally collapse, I think we've seen Paddock do that sometimes, unfortunately, where he struggles one inning and you can just tell that he's still thinking about that instead of moving on to the next pitch, moving on to the next batter. But for veteran pitchers like Clevinger and all that, I don't really read too much into that, giving up runs to see it, home runs to see how they react to it, giving up runs to see how they react to it. In terms of Clevinger, just because he's a veteran, he's been there for a while. But in terms of Gore, yeah, I can definitely agree with you, Quan, about giving up runs and just seeing how he reacts and seeing how he bounces back. So I definitely would agree with that. And look, it's the major leagues. McKenzie Gore, every other pitcher is going to be facing the very best competition in the world. That's what the major leagues are. And so you're not going to not give up a run. So you're going to struggle. Every pitcher struggles. Even the best pitchers in the league, like Garrett Cole, Max Scherzer, when they give up runs, it's home runs. And so even they struggle sometimes for their standards. Now it's just a matter of how do they react from it. And the best ones, they're the ones who are able to get that out of their head and move on to the next pitch and attack, or use it as motivation and just get pissed off and just go strike everyone else out. So I think we'll see how Gore does, if he makes another start or if he appears in another spring training game before opening day. But like I said, right now I'd still have him on the outside of the 28-man opening day roster. Omar comments, I seen a lot of rumors of a trade for Contreras for Hosmer and prospects. I haven't seen those rumors as of late. I've seen them before. I don't think those are likely. Now we're March 29th, so we're now 9 days, I think, till opening day. So I don't see a trade happening. I think a lot would have to go into that for that to happen. One, if the Padres are going to get Contreras, now they have 5 catchers on the 40-man. So would they trade one of those prospects? Would be Camposano going back? Even then, they'd still have the same problem. They'd still have 4 catchers. So would Caratini go in that deal as well? They'd probably have to find a deal for Caratini somewhere else, right? Because they do have Yan Gomes, so maybe the Cubs would just bring Camposano straight up, and they have Gomes as that veteran catcher. Quan, in reply to Omar, says, I don't understand trading for Wilson Contreras. We have 4 catchers as is. 2 is two catchers too many. I kind of agree with that. I don't really agree with that in terms of immediate, like opening day, 28-man roster. I think 3 is fine because I think they like Caratini's, veteran presence and his defense, and he still can pitch hit if they, want him to. If they want him to come in late game for Jorge Alfaro, say that, possibility, if that possibility happens. So I think 3 catchers is the right amount for opening day. And then once they get past April, assuming all health is all good and all that, and, the DH is still Voit and everything's still going well with that, and Beatty's still okay, I think then is when they would not still have 3 catchers. I think they'd have 2. But it's an interesting point. All right, next topic here. We talked about Gore, talked about Clevinger. Today, also, Lamet pitched again. He went 1 inning, didn't give up a hit, didn't give up a walk, no runs, 1 strikeout. Again, we did not get this game on television, so it's kind of hard to comment on anything. But if he didn't give up any runs, didn't walk anybody, that's really all I care about. He did strike out someone, so that's good. But it's kind of limited on what I can really, break down on that because, again, I didn't watch it. No one could really watch it unless they were in the stadium. So that's pretty much all I can really talk about in terms of Dinelson Lamet. I didn't really see any reports in terms of the beat writers on how Lamet did. I'm sure we'll see that sometime later today or tomorrow. So I guess you can stay tuned for that. But that was, what Lamet did. And then moving on now, that was Tuesday's game. Let's move on to Bob Melvin's comments before we get to the City Connect jerseys that will be unveiled. Bob Melvin spoke to the media today before the game at the Giants in Scottsdale, and some notable comments that I wanted to talk about. He said that he's, quote, still leaning, end quote, towards a 5-man rotation, hopes to know more in the next couple of days on if he'll still have that 5-man rotation or if they end up going to a 6-man rotation. He prefers a 5-man rotation, and we probably might, I think, I'd say I'd probably lean it towards probably in terms of the likeliness of seeing like some piggybacks with Clevinger not really built up as much as like Darvish per se, for example, or Snell. I think piggybacking Snell as well is definitely a strong possibility with Paddock or Martinez, whoever doesn't get that 5th spot, or Weathers if they decide to put him on the roster, or someone like Stammen. That's another possibility as well. So I think a 5-man rotation is more likely with piggybacks instead of a 6-man, and I'd still have Gore not on the roster because I want him to come up as a starting pitcher and start games, and if he's not doing that with the Major League roster, I'd rather have him in the minor leagues starting games. Another thing that he mentioned, he would like to know going into opening day who he'll close out games with. But there's still time left, 7 more games left on the spring slate before that April 6th off day leading into the April 7th opening day game against the Arizona Diamondbacks in Arizona. So there's still time left to decide that closer situation. But with that said, it's hard to imagine that they're going to have like a real full-time closer by opening day. And like they'll know exactly who their closer is and they'll have no doubts about it. And he's going to, be the closer the whole season because Luis Garcia obviously is not an option anymore. Pagan has struggled. Obviously, he struggled a lot today on Monday in his last spring training outing. Robert Suarez, from what I know, he's been pretty good. But are they fully confident in someone who didn't pitch in the big leagues last year to come be the closer immediately full time? Lamet is another option, but do they want to, really put him right into the fire immediately and say, hey, pitch back-to-back games in some of these big series? Are they willing to do that? So I feel like they'll I feel like Bob Melvin will say someone is the closer because he likes having that closer, but I feel like it could definitely change, whether that's a week of the season, a few weeks into the season, whether that depends. It could depend on, to be quite honest, it could depend on if Lamet, pitches well out of the gate, if they're confident in him being the closer, if he doesn't start the season as the closer already. So those are the things I would look into, with the closer situation, and just seeing how guys do. That's the big indicator. Obviously, the rest of spring training, how many appearances does Lamet get remaining? How many appearances does Pagan get remaining? How many appearances will Suarez get, remaining on the schedule? So it's still fluid, it seems like, the closer situation, and it's a wait and see. And in terms of Clevinger, like I mentioned earlier, he told the media earlier before the Giants game he was hoping Clevinger to get 3-ish innings, but he ended up getting 5 outs. Getting to one more comment here. Seiya Suzuki is batting a whopping 0 in his batting average this spring. Did we dodge a bullet? I think that's pretty stupid to just go out and, assume that we dodged a bullet just because he doesn't have a hit in spring training. There's been guys, remember Ohtani struggled his first spring training and then he's won an MVP. So the Padres didn't dodge a bullet by missing out on him, right? So I think it's foolish to just judge things on a small sample size of at-bats. Could this be a smaller degree of the Ha-Seong Kim thing, where Kim didn't really pick up the velocity in his first year, and Suzuki doesn't do the same? Maybe. But they have Suzuki for 5 years? So 1 year in the contract's not going to outweigh the next 4 years in the deal if he plays well the next 4 years and doesn't play well the first year. So I wouldn't take too much into that in terms of spring training, and frankly, maybe even this first year, especially since the Cubs are not World Series contenders this year. Frankly, I don't really understand them, signing Marcus Stroman to that deal when they just traded away Baez, Rizzo, Bryant. I didn't really understand where they're going with that. And then to bring in a guy who doesn't have major league experience, and it seems like an overpay. That's why I wasn't too mad about the Padres missing out on Suzuki, in comparison to how mad I was right when the news came down and the contract wasn't announced, because I didn't know the terms. So I don't really know what the Cubs are doing there, what their whole plan is. Maybe they're, trying to retool instead of rebuild, and I guess good for them, right? They're not doing a full Cincinnati Reds where they don't want to win. They're not even trying to win or even act like they're trying to win. But at the same time, I don't know what they really were trying to do getting Stroman, and then it seems like the Suzuki deal is an overpay. But again, that's off topic. Getting back to Sar's question about, Suzuki not having a hit so far. Did we dodge a bullet? It's way too early to decide. And I'm not going to decide based on spring training games. All right. So yeah, let's save that. Alex Silva comments, Clev has not pitched against live batters in a year and a half. We should expect rust. I'll freak out after a couple more starts and he still struggles. That's definitely a better thought process than any fan who wants to overreact. I didn't see fans overreacting to Clevinger on Twitter today, giving up 8 runs. So that's definitely a good thing, because we know Padres Twitter sometimes can be people, overreacting. Some of it is sarcastic, and I think some people don't realize that, but some of it also is serious. So I'd also, mention that as well. But yeah, I think it's good. That's definitely, Alex, that's definitely a much better thought process to go, into the season with, to judge Clevinger on the first couple starts during the season and see if he still struggles, than to freak out after his first start in a long time against big league action. First time since 2020, end of 2020. I'm not going to overreact. I don't think fans should either. All right, let's get to Omar. That's a good question about best hypothetical trade to fix the outfield. We'll get to that. But first, I wanted to get to the Padres City Connect jerseys. They will be debuted on July 8th against the San Francisco Giants, according to the Sports Business Journal. The uniforms will be unveiled July 1st. That's what Kevin Acee said in his column today, or in his news notes article. The replicas will be available for purchase. And so, translation, money. So, look, when Major League Baseball and their Twitter account was teasing what the announcement was going to be, I don't know if this was the announcement, because I think, didn't they say Wednesday was going to be an announcement and today's Tuesday? So maybe the announcement hasn't come. But I guessed, I think I quote tweeted it or something and said, let me guess what this announcement is, because they're teasing an announcement but not saying what it is, or they didn't say what it was. My quote tweet to that, my response was, let me guess, it involves money, and it does. This City Connect thing involves money. I'm not too sure I'm going to like this. Look, I love the brown and gold. As you can see, I'm wearing this brown and gold shirt, this customized shirt my mom made me, Beat LA, wearing the Padres hat. I'm all brown and gold. I love the brown and gold color scheme. And so if it's not a brown and gold jersey, and there's been leaks on the socks, Omar says, where it's not brown and gold, and it's like this pink, This pink palm tree, and it's just definitely not Padres colors. I would not like that. I don't understand that. And I understand where they're coming from, because it's money, right? They're going to sell the replicas. Fans are going to buy the replicas, because not all fans think like me, right? Some fans are going to like it, or some fans, they're just going to get it because they like having all the jerseys. They collect jerseys. So that's kind of my thoughts on that. I think that it's just another money grab. And unless the jerseys are brown and gold, or if they're throwback jerseys or something, I can't sit here and say that I'm going to love them and say I'm going to go purchase these jerseys. That's not my thought process. So that's the City Connect stuff that'll be unveiled this July. I'll probably be going to that game July 7th or July 8th, that Friday night game against the Giants, because my family has season tickets. That's our season plan. That Friday night game is included in that. So I'll probably be at that game to see that, in full effect. So that's the City Connect jerseys. Moving on to Matt Beaty, new San Diego Padre, the newest San Diego Padre. He commented to the media for the first time as a Padre. He played in his first spring training game for the Padres today against the Giants. Came in at first base during the middle of the game. But let's first get to his comments. He said, quote, "I'm excited," end quote. Quote, "It's a great opportunity," end quote. He said he was excited for the Dodgers when they got Freddie Freeman, and excited for the organization because they were going to get better. But he knew that it limited his chances for having some playing time, because he was the fill-in first baseman before that Freddie Freeman deal. And now the fill-in first baseman is probably Max Muncy, or a guy like Bellinger. Muncy will play second now, but they can put Gavin Lux there. Freddie Freeman's DHing or has a day off, or he gets hurt, and then they put Muncy at first. So it really limited Matt Beaty's playing time there. And so he said, he knew that the DH, he also said the DH limits his pinch hitting opportunities. So he, quote, "kind of saw the writing on the wall," end quote. And that's definitely what I expected him to say. I mentioned that, in my reaction episode 137, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, on YouTube. It was definitely, expected, him saying this, that his opportunities weren't going to be there. And so I kind of view it. I know some fans I saw on YouTube in the comments, or some fans on Twitter, they weren't really as excited. They saw the stats, that the numbers weren't great. The power numbers weren't great. The power numbers were kind of comparable to Profar and stuff. His most home runs he's hit in a season in his 3 years is 9, I think, in 2019. But at the same time, look, he didn't have a great chance with the Dodgers. I'm viewing this as glass half full here and saying this is an opportunity for him to come in, get more opportunities, and therefore his numbers will go up. His power numbers will go up. He will have, more opportunities to hit home runs. He will have more opportunities to probably play in the field against right-handed hitters because he doesn't hit lefties well, but he hits righties well in terms of OPS, better than Profar. So I think he'll get more opportunities to play, and therefore he will have better numbers. So I'm more encouraged than probably some people that I've seen in terms of the impact that Beatty will have. I'm not saying he's Fernando Tatis Jr. and he's going to have this 6 WAR and all that, but I do think, he was pretty clutch at some points with the Dodgers, and I think there's possibilities of him coming in the game late in games if the Padres don't like a certain matchup, if they don't want Profar up at the plate late in the game at some point, and they, it's a tie game and they're okay with Beatty playing left. Maybe that's a situation. Again, playing against right-handed starters, that could be a possible situation. So I'm of the belief that he will play better with more playing time, if you get what I'm saying there. He'll be more comfortable, get more opportunities, and he won't necessarily have as much pressure to say, your roster spot's on the line here with the Dodgers. If you don't play well, we have all these no-name prospects that are going to come up, like Luke Raley or whatever the heck his name was, that are just going to come up and, hit home runs against the Padres. That was pretty much that's what was happening with the Dodgers, and this is something that I think won't really happen as much with the Padres. I think he'll still have to fight for his roster spots, but at the same time, I think that he'll not be like he won't have as much pressure on him because I think he's the 4th outfielder right now. He firmly has a bench spot, and the bench depth for the Padres isn't that great, especially with the Fernando Tatis Jr. injury. So I definitely think this is a good move for Matt Beaty for the Padres because he's going to get a chance to shine with the Padres, where he didn't get as much of a chance to shine with the Dodgers. And so he said his biggest takeaway from the Dodgers organization is just competing every day, and that his roster spot is never comfortable. And I just went into that. I think that was definitely true with the Dodgers, but I don't think it's going to be as true with the Padres in terms of his roster spot being on the line, at least immediately, because who would you rather have? Who would you rather have? Trace Thompson as one of the 2 outfielders on the bench, or would you rather have Matt Beaty? And I think the answer is Matt Beaty. So I think that the Dodgers bench was obviously a lot deeper than the Padres. And the Padres. So I guess what I'm saying here is that the Padres, their, lack of outfield depth options before this Beatty deal helps Beatty in terms of maybe being more comfortable and saying, hey, I'll just relax here. I'm going to play my butt off, but at least I don't have to continue looking over my shoulder. So that was Matt Beatty's comments. In terms of his play on the field, again, it was not televised, so it was hard to really evaluate his 2 at-bats. But listening to the radio, Jesse and Tony, he singled in his first at-bat. Again, he didn't start, but he came into the game. And then he had a deep fly out to center field in the 9th inning. I was listening to Tony call it, him and Jesse call it, and Tony said that it went over 420 feet to center field, and it was just shy of the warning track. And Tony said that, Tony Gwynn Jr., that is, said that it would have been out in every other spring training ballpark but Scottsdale, but the Giants, at least in Arizona. So the ball was crushed, is what it seems like, to dead center. But Scottsdale, that stadium, just kept it in. So that's definitely a good sign. Right out of the gate, seems like he's hitting the ball well, making good contact. But again, it's 2 spring training at bats, so you're not going to overreact to it. But what I'll say to that is, again, I didn't get to see it. No one got to see it unless you were at the game. But it seems like an encouraging start from Matt Beaty in a Padres uniform, especially, getting out of the gate here in spring training. In terms of the comments here, one says Profar is trash. Well, he's not. He's definitely not the best outfield option, but at the same time, I think he's an okay outfield option. I think the platoon between him and Beaty isn't the worst thing in the world if Luke Voit produces and stays healthy, hitting home runs. If the catching position continues to hit the way it is in spring training, if Grisham and Myers have some sort of bounce back season, I think that's how the left field platoon situation won't look as bad. So that's to answer that question in terms of Profar. Getting to Kevin Acey's comments, that starting rotation possibility, he said in his article today that the Padres could go Darvish, Musgrove, and the fifth starter, whether that's Nick Martinez or Paddock, have that be Darvish going the first game, Musgrove the third game, and then Martinez probably the fifth game. And then you stagger Snell and Clevinger, whether that's Clevinger pitching the second game or Snell pitching the second game. You stagger those two guys. So Snell and Clevinger, one of those two pitching the second game, and then the other pitching the fourth game. And they're not built up. So you probably have a piggyback bullpen type day after that. So what they're trying to do is they're trying to have Snell and Clevinger pitch not back-to-back days so that the bullpen doesn't get worn out kind of like it did last year where they had to have back-to-back bullpen days. And they're confident that Musgrove, Darvish, and Martinez, or Musgrove, Darvish, Paddock, they can pitch deep into games, 5-6 innings, maybe 7 innings at some point for Darvish and Musgrove. And obviously, at some point, hopefully for Snell and Clevinger, but at least at the start of the season, they're hoping that those guys can pitch pretty deep into the game so that the bullpen isn't taxed. And so it's okay if Clevinger and Snell only go 3-4 innings in the second and fourth games of the season, at least to start out. So the bullpen's going to be fresh. So I think that's a very intriguing starting rotation possibility. And thinking about it more, I think that's definitely something that the Padres should do. Because, frankly, a lot of it's about the health, right? You have Fernando coming back second half of the year, hopefully. You have Snell and Clevinger. They will be built up probably after April. Once May comes around, they'll probably be built up. So this whole piggyback situation hopefully won't happen. But in terms of the piggyback thing, this is the best situation or best solution, I think, in terms of keeping guys healthy. Darvish, Musgrove, Martinez, they look healthy right now. So just letting them pitch regularly, I think, is okay. Darvish and Musgrove are obviously experienced in the big leagues, and Martinez has looked pretty good that one start that he pitched against the Dodgers. But Snell and Clevinger, if Snell and Clevinger don't stay healthy, it's going to be really hard, I think, for the Padres to go deep at all. Like, you need a full rotation. And if Snell and Clevinger are not healthy, then all of a sudden you're looking at a situation where Gore, you're going to put a lot of pressure on McKenzie Gore to, really pitch well in the big leagues because he'd be called up. You're going to put pressure on Ryan Weathers, who struggled last year. You're going to put pressure on Paddock, assuming that he's healthy, coming off the UCL injury. Then you're putting pressure on Nick Martinez, who hasn't pitched in the big leagues in a long time. And he's really going to have to live up to that $6 million that he's making this year. So you're putting on a lot of pressure on other guys if those two don't stay healthy. And so keeping those two guys healthy should be a priority. And so if that means piggybacking those guys for the first month of the season or the first couple or few starts of the season, I'm all for it. And especially when you're doing it and you're piggybacking those guys with like Chris Paddock or Ryan Weathers, guys that seem like they're healthy right now. And maybe they're best served to pitch only 1 or 2 innings or 3 innings after that. And they can just give it their all there and only face that starting lineup one way through the season or one time, through the lineup instead of having to go multiple times and guys having, adjusted against them. So I think that's a very intriguing possibility. And my gut instinct would be that they'd have the first way through the rotation would be Darvish on opening day, Clevinger probably pitching game 2, and then Musgrove pitching game 3, Snell game 4, Martinez game 5, and then Weathers, Paddock piggybacking Snell, Clevinger, like I just mentioned. But also another kind of positive thing coming out of Musgrove going that third game is he'd be able to pitch the home opener on April 14th. And he obviously, from San Diego, he knows that means more to him. I think the Padres, quite frankly, think that means more. They know that means more to him than him getting the opening day start, because pitching at home, that home opener, it's like a holiday pretty much in San Diego. So he knows growing up how much that means to the city and how much that would mean to him. Him pitching in Arizona, while I'm sure there will be some fans there, that's not going to be the same as pitching out to a sold-out Padres crowd. And, by the way, he'd be facing a better team for his first home start of the year. And I think that just means more to him, and I think the Padres know that. And to be quite honest, the whole opening day starter thing and the whole, who's pitching second and third, that I think is a little overblown at times. I think some fans can look at it and say, okay, so if Darvish is pitching game 1, Musgrove game 2, and someone else game 3, those are your, Darvish is number 1 in the rotation, Musgrove's the second best starter in the rotation, and that's not usually necessarily the case. Sometimes that's just based on them working back in spring training or certain matchups, out of the gate. Like if they like Musgrove against, a certain team, out of the gate over another team, they might put him on a different day, even though he, in terms of how great he is as a starting pitcher, in comparison to the rest of the starting rotation, might be different from where he's actually starting. So I think that's definitely a good possibility, that whole 5-man rotation thing with the piggybacking and having Snell and Clevinger not pitching back-to-back days and kind of not pitching guys in terms of how good they are, having the best starting pitcher pitch first, second best starting pitcher pitch second. Instead, have it more, based on health. I think that's definitely a better way to line up things. I'd say that. So that's the intriguing starting pitcher possibility. Last thing here, Padres unveiled their 2022 broadcast schedule today. All 162 games will be played on 97.3 The Fan, the radio. They'll have an hour pre- and post-game show. 158 games will be on Bally Sports San Diego. So that leaves 4 primetime games not on Bally Sports San Diego. On opening day, they'll have the hour Padres live pre- and post-game show. Or post-game show will be 30 minutes. Hour live pre-game show, the home opener and opening day. So that'll be a special 1 hour instead of half-hour Padres live. And then their first national broadcast will be April 16th on Fox Sports 1, that Saturday game against the Braves at home, and then Sunday Night Baseball on ESPN April 17th. The K-Rod broadcast will also be April 2nd, or it'll be on ESPN2 on April 17th, where Michael Kay and Alex Rodriguez, they'll pretty much be having like a sports talk show, pretty much just talking on the couch, kind of like the Manning cast in the NFL. They'll be doing that baseball on Sunday Night Baseball on April 17th, Padres Braves at Petco Park. Other national televised games are May 14th at Atlanta, May 21st in San Francisco, June 30th at the Dodgers, and then September 7th at Arizona. That's as of now. Again, that can all change. May 13th at the Braves is the Apple TV Plus broadcast. That was announced. That is free to anyone who has internet, I guess is what they're saying. I initially thought you'd have to pay for that Apple TV thing. But if you can stream it live, and if you can stream it for free as long as you have internet and you download the app or whatever, I guess that's fine for most people because most people have internet. But yeah, that's May 13th, so that game will not be on any TV. It will be on, so it won't be on Valley Sports. It won't be on ESPN or Fox Sports 1 or TBS or MLB Network. It's going to be on Apple TV Plus only, part of Apple and MLB's Friday night doubleheader deal. Again, money, all about the money, and making it harder for some people or more difficult for some people, and more of a headache for fans to watch the game. So that's not a surprise. But April 12th is another national televised game, TBS against the Giants in San Francisco. July 2nd, at the Dodgers on Fox. July 9th versus San Francisco at home on Fox. So those are the national televised broadcasts. Again, all 162 games will be on the radio like usual. And then May 13th, the Apple TV Plus game. And Sunday Night Baseball, April 17th, against the Braves at Petco Park. And then they have that FS1 game the day before that Saturday game at Petco Park. So that's the national TV broadcast. And then before we get out of here, talking about some questions here in the chat, Alex Silva comments, with these Contreras rumors, can he be playing left field? Would he be the left fielder? I don't know. I've never seen him play anything but catcher. Wilson Contreras wouldn't be the left fielder. He's been an all-star as a catcher, so frankly, I don't think that would be smart for the Padres to do that, and they just acquired someone who could play left field. So I wouldn't see that happening. And if they acquire Contreras, then they're probably getting rid of Luis Camposano, I would expect, and they'd probably get rid of probably Victor Caratini or one of the catchers. I think that's the way that they'd go about it. So I personally would not see Contreras playing left field because he's not a left fielder. So let's see. Erie says, I think Victor watched her stream last night and was like, watch this. Well, I didn't stream last night, but because I was working. But yeah, Victor, yeah, he did play pretty well today from what I saw on the box score. It wasn't on TV, so you can't really like judge his at-bats, but I think he had at least one RBI. But yeah, so again, this episode is sponsored by Gaglione Bros, cheesesteaks and subs. Thank you everyone for watching in live, watching replay on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button. I'll do this. Hit the like or subscribe button if you think that Matt Beaty will be the starting left fielder at some point this season. So I'll end with that. Hit the subscribe button if you think that will happen. Thank you everyone for listening on the podcast. Watching on replay again at Talking Friars on all our social media channels. Ben Fadden signing off. Stay safe. Let's go Padres. Until next time. See ya.